Imagine your favorite coffee shop, now run entirely by robots. No baristas, no cashiers, just AI taking orders and making your latte. It's efficient, it's futuristic, but it's also a sign of things to come. A sign that AI is taking over more and more jobs. But who benefits? And what happens to the 70% whose jobs are replaced by AI? Is universal basic income, UBI, the answer? Or is it an illusion? Universal basic income. A regular payment to every citizen, no strings attached. It sounds like the perfect safety net for an AI-driven world. But in a world rapidly being reshaped by artificial intelligence, the promise of UBI begins to unravel. It's a false promise, and it's simply not feasible for most of the world. To understand why, let's paint a picture of this AI-dominated future. Picture this. AI now handles 70% of jobs. Manufacturing, white collar, transportation, customer service, even creative fields. It's happening faster than we think. This automation creates immense wealth for the few who own AI, the capital class. They control the data centers, the algorithms, the robots. Their wealth and power grow exponentially, while the need for human labor accelerates towards zero. While a select few amass unimaginable fortunes, the vast majority of the population faces a starkly different reality. This is where the solution of UBI is often promised, but a closer look reveals its fundamental flaws. First, let's consider the sheer cost. UBI sounds good to some, in theory, but the numbers simply don't add up for most countries. How do we fund it when 70% of the people are unemployed? Let's say we aim for a UBI living wage of $4,000 per month. That's $48,000 per year. For a country like the US, the cost for this is over $15 trillion per year. That's a staggering amount. Several times the current federal budget. Where will that money come from? Most governments will struggle to fund UBI for their own citizens. But with 70% unemployment, income tax revenue dries up. Sales taxes plummet as people have less disposable income. Could governments try and borrow the money? National debts are already at record highs. Adding trillions more would risk economic collapse. Some suggest an AI tax on big tech, but these companies are masters at minimizing their tax burdens. They can shift profits to tax havens, invest in lobbying to fight such taxes, or even relocate to countries with more favorable regulations. Many countries would welcome these big companies with open arms and charge them a minimum of taxes. The newfound revenues would be a boon to their country finances. They would also agree that the big tech companies set up offices, research, factories, or data centers as well to employ locals. Of course, they would not charge the proposed AI tax. That said, a few wealthy nations might be able to fund UBI on their own, or at least for a while. Countries like Norway or Saudi Arabia, with vast sovereign wealth funds built on natural resources, could potentially afford it. But this is the exception, not the rule. And even they might find it unsustainable in the long run, as AI potentially disrupts those very resource markets. If funding UBI nationally is a monumental challenge, funding it globally is a near impossibility. Now, let's talk about funding this globally then. It's a logistical and economic impossibility. AI's benefits are concentrated in wealthy nations. How do developing countries with limited infrastructure and resources fund UBI for their citizens? They can't. The fruits of this AI revolution are flowing disproportionately to a handful of companies and wealthy nations, leaving much of the world behind, struggling in the shadows of this technological boom. The idea of a global UBI, funded by a global AI tax, is pure fantasy. It assumes a level of international cooperation that's simply unrealistic. But more importantly, there's no global enforcer with the power to levy and collect such a tax. And creating one would mean individual countries surrendering their sovereignty, their right to make their own economic decisions. This is a non-starter for most nations, and for good reason. Now, some might argue that a global government could solve this funding problem, but this solution creates far more problems than it solves. Let's say, for the sake of argument, a global government did emerge with the power to tax and fund a global UBI. This would create a dangerous concentration of power. A single entity controlling the economic lifeline of every person and company on the planet? That's a recipe for disaster, for a loss of national identity and autonomy. It's a cure that's far worse than the disease. Beyond the economic and political hurdles, UBI also creates a very real and immediate threat: a global migration crisis. If only a handful of countries can afford to implement UBI, what happens? We'll see a flood of people, desperate for a better life, trying to cross borders into those UBI havens, just like the issues the EU faces today, but on a vastly larger global scale. This will lead to border controls, social unrest, and potentially even violent conflict. It's a humanitarian and a logistical nightmare that UBI causes. Even if we could somehow overcome these obstacles, we still face a fundamental problem of incentives, which have invested billions in AI to be able to reduce labor costs, voluntarily agree to fund UBI, even if a mechanism existed. There's no economic incentive for them to do so. In fact, it's against their interests. They've built their empires on automation, on replacing human workers with machines. Moreover, UBI could erode the very foundations of a competitive market. If the unemployed masses are pacified with a basic income, where is the incentive for new companies to form, to innovate, to challenge the AI monopolies? UBI could lead to economic stagnation, with a few powerful corporations dominating the market, further entrenching the power of the capital class. Some might say, but UBI will free people to pursue creative endeavors. However, in a world where AI can generate art, music, and literature far beyond human capabilities, what is the real value of human creativity? And will a basic income be enough to support a thriving art scene when the market is flooded with AI-generated content? Adding fuel to the fire, governments could start up the printing presses and print money to fund UBI. Obviously, this is not going to work long term and will trigger crippling inflation, potentially hyperinflation. That $4,000 UBI payment quickly becomes worthless as the cost of living skyrockets. Even if AI does make some things cheaper, will it be enough to offset the economic shock of mass unemployment and inflation? It's unlikely. We need to think about how abundance actually translates to the average person. Cheaper gadgets are great, but they don't put food on the table or roof over your head if you have no income and the cost of essentials is soaring. And let's be honest, a roof over your head is not a given either. For many, a $4,000 UBI in America will not be enough to pay for the basic necessities, let alone provide disposable income for these cheaper gadgets. And while cheaper gadgets might seem appealing, they can also be a distraction, a way to keep people entertained and pacified, while the real issues of inequality and powerlessness fester beneath the surface. Will virtual reality and endless streams of AI-generated entertainment be enough to satisfy a population that has been stripped of its economic agency and its ability to shape its own future? Or will these shiny objects simply become tools for maintaining the status quo, keeping the masses docile while the elite consolidate their power and wealth? Beyond the economic fallacies, UBI also presents a dangerous illusion: the illusion of freedom and choice. Let's dispel this notion that UBI somehow grants people freedom. The freedom to do what exactly when AI can do almost everything better and cheaper? When your basic needs are met, but you have no real economic power, no opportunity for advancement, no say in how society is run, are you truly free? You may even struggle to maintain a basic standard of living, as mass unemployment can have a devastating impact on mental health. Rates of depression and suicide may skyrocket, Or are you simply a passive recipient of a handout, dependent on the very system that has marginalized you? UBI in this context creates an illusion of choice, an illusion of autonomy, while masking a deeper reality of dependence and powerlessness. And the concerns go even deeper, looking through the lens of long-term societal impact. Without jobs, humans lose their economic and political leverage. Most people's power and leverage come from their labor. But once AI can do all the labor that keeps the economy going, and robots and AI keep the military powerful, the state has no more reason to care about the demands of its humans. It's not just about losing jobs to AI, it's about losing our very expertise. Today, knowledge is spread out among many individuals, each a specialist in their own field. But AI will centralize all that knowledge to become the ultimate expert in every domain. What happens when a handful of corporations control not just the tools, but all the very knowledge that underpins our society? This concentration of expertise creates a new kind of power imbalance, one where humans aren't just economically marginalized, but intellectually marginalized as well. And with this loss of leverage and expertise comes a chilling consequence: the death of social mobility. Forget rags to riches. AI could make social mobility a thing of the past. Achieving outlier success through your labor or intelligence in most or all areas is now impossible. The area of human achievement in the hard sciences, entrepreneurship, even the arts could be over. This isn't just about economic inequality, it's about the very dynamism of our society. Throughout history, progress has been driven by individuals who challenged the status quo, who rose from humble beginnings to achieve great things. But what happens when that upward mobility is gone, when the rungs of the social ladder are effectively removed? We risk creating a static society, a world where the elite class, big corporations, and governments are permanently entrenched, and the potential for human progress and innovation is stifled. But let's dig deeper into this idea of a society without purpose. For many, work is more than just a paycheck. It's a source of identity, a social connection, of meaning and purpose. It's how we contribute to society and feel valued. A UBI, while providing a basic level of material security, cannot replace these essential human needs. It cannot replicate the sense of accomplishment that comes with a job well done, the camaraderie of colleagues, or the feeling of contribution to something larger than oneself. Let that sink in. The bottom line is this: in a world where AI dominates the economy, UBI is not a viable solution for most of the world. The numbers don't add up. The incentives aren't aligned. It's a false promise that ignores the fundamental economic realities of an AI-driven future. Instead of a utopian safety net, we risk creating a system that's unsustainable, unfair, and ultimately unworkable, with the added threat of mass migration and global instability. UBI in an AI-dominated world is not a solution, it's a surrender. It's an admission that we have given up on creating an economy that works for everyone, and instead are settling for a system that sustains the masses while enriching the few. We must be proactive, demanding and creating a future where AI benefits all of humanity. This means engaging in difficult conversations, exploring alternative economic models, and demanding a seat at the table where decisions about our future are made. It's not enough to simply hope for the best. We must actively work to create it. The future is not something that happens to us. It's something we build together. We need to aim higher, to demand more, to build a future where technology serves all of humanity, not just the select elite. We're living in the most exciting time in human history, and it's up to us to build the future. So what do you think? Do you agree that UBI is not possible? What solutions do you see for the challenges of an AI-driven future? Share your ideas in the comments and let's start a conversation. Want to unlock the power of AI? Our free newsletter gives you the tips, trends, AI news, and tools you need to succeed. Sign up with a link in the description below. Your journey doesn't stop here. Watch our next video right here. and keep building your knowledge.